growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, you Road to Growth listeners. Today I have Bryan Clayton. He is a CEO and co-founder of GreenPal. Thank you, Bryan, for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, no. So, GreenPal. Is it okay to describe it how we talked about before, the Uber for lawn mowing business, or is that like attaching your wheels to another company? I mean, how do you feel when that's kind of described that way?
We don't have any problems with it. It's the easiest way to describe it in 4 words. You know, you just get it. It's the Uber for lawn mowing. It's the easiest way for a homeowner to book a lawn mowing service nationwide in the United States. So if you're a homeowner and need to get this chore done, your lawn mowed, rather than calling around on Craigslist or Facebook or asking friends and family, you just download our app, pop your address in, you get hooked up with 4 or 5 quotes. Really quickly, you can read reviews, pick who you want to work with, and schedule them right through the app, and everything just happens like magic, like Uber. So we've been at it for a decade. We're like a 10-year overnight success.
And for the actual landscapers that do the work, are you vetting them? Are they paying to be on the platform, or how does that work?
Yeah, so for consumers, it's a nice convenience. You can pop your address in and hire a lawn mowing service. For pros that make their living in the lawn care industry, it's an entire operating system. It's an entire platform that they plug into to grow their business. That's really why we do what we do. We offer a nice convenience to homeowners, but really why I get out of bed in the morning and why we've spent the last 10 years building this business is to help hardworking people in the lawn mowing business double and triple their income in a year, and really kind of almost give them a business in a box. And we like to think the keys to the American dream. Like we have hundreds and hundreds of stories of lawn mowing services that, you know, were able to buy new equipment or put a kid through school or get themselves out of debt or whatever, and done it within the lawn mowing business and on top of our technology. And that's a lot of fun. I actually, before GreenPal, had a landscaping business. I started mowing grass in high school as a way to make extra cash, and over like a 15-year period of time, built one of the larger landscaping companies in the southeastern United States. Got that business over 150 employees, got it to $10 million a year in revenue. And in 2013, sold that company. And after I sold it, I took some time off and then had the idea for GreenPal. And I thought, well, how hard could it be? And luckily, it was naivete as an asset, and recruited 2 co-founders and started working on the idea for GreenPal. And now here we are 10 years later, and we've got a good marketplace going nationwide in the United States.
Well, and definitely appreciate them. Just trying to pushing back a little bit on kind of, so what's the vetting process? Because I think at least in Southern California, and I'm assuming it's a lot of other places, there's a lot of mom and pop, at least, that come up, landscaping businesses. Right. And it's always trying to figure out, okay, which one should I work with? What's the differences? So is there a vetting process that you go through, that GreenPal goes through, or is it kind of a pay to play, or what's that process that the consumer knows, okay, I'm going to actually get the best one for the right price?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the lawn mowing business, it's really fragmented. Chuck in a truck, Peter in a pickup, Molly in a mower. These are small operators. They're just one-man shows, one-person shows. And to your point, yeah, they can be flaky. They can be fly by night. There's not a whole lot of barriers to entry to get into the lawn mowing business. And so that's what makes it hard for consumers.
Yeah.
And that's the problem we solve. We solve the problem of the disappearing lawn guy, or the flaky lawn guy, or the guy that pulls the bait and switch, or the guy that just doesn't have the equipment. And so, yes, there is a minimal vetting process on the front end. When a vendor comes onto the platform, we check to make sure they have the right equipment. We talk to a few of their customers that they've worked for before. We do a bank check on them, an identification check on them, and then they're on the platform. Okay. But that's really the very minimum part of the vetting process and the ongoing vetting process. We then score them rigorously. How often do they get hired? So are they quoting fair prices to people looking to hire them? How often do they show up on time? And we call that a reliability rating. So we score them on that. Like if they're supposed to be there on Thursday, do they actually show up on Thursday? And then we score them on how often do they get booked for a second, third, and fourth visit. We call that your ongoing rating. And these are three of about a dozen ways that we score vendors, but they're some of the most primary ways. And by way of doing that, we understand who the reliable, trustworthy, consistent vendors who care about their customers are, and we promote those in the platform. And then the ones that aren't reliable, who don't ever get hired again, who quote outrageous prices, we kind of downgrade and expel them from the platform. So
Makes
a
sense.
consumer can jump on the app and quickly get 3, 4, 5 quotes that are competitive for their yard maintenance in a matter of minutes rather than hours, and then they can make an informed decision in terms of, okay, these are reliable, and then also here's what other people are saying about their services through a standard 5-star rating system. And it's just flat out the easiest way to get hooked up with a reliable contractor versus doing it the old way of leaving voicemails and hoping that they show up and do a good job.
No, it makes sense. Total sense. I mean, well, I know you talked about it briefly about your background in the landscaping business. Who was a young Brian? Were you doing landscaping, doing yard work, in your teens? Who was a young Brian?
Yeah, that's a very that's exactly what young Brian was doing. At 15 years old, I was forced into the business
Oh,
by my father. Actually, he made me go mow my first yard, and something about making $20 for an hour's work just stuck with me. And I first thing I did was pass out a bunch of flyers all over the neighborhood, and by the end of that first summer, I think I had like a dozen customers, and that just resonated with me. I thought, this is incredible. Why would people go work a regular job when they can just do something like this? And I stuck with that business all through high school, all through college. And when I graduated college, I had to make a decision. Was I gonna like take a pay cut and go into the job market, or stick with this lawn mowing business? I didn't really want to be a lawn guy my whole life, but I went to business school and took what little I learned in business school and applied it to a business plan, and went to work, built a really good team around me, and built a big business in that industry.
when when you were doing the lawn care and going to school, what was that balancing act? Was it, all right, I'm going to school to build the lawn care business. I'm just using this for some side cash, and I want to actually get my knowledge and then go on another path. And what was that mindset for younger you?
Yeah, to your point, in the early days, it was very much, uh, got to pay rent. You gotta pay for groceries, and this was the easiest way to do it. And I like the title of your show, Road to Growth. I think a business can be your road to growth, and it certainly was for me. I guess maybe year 5 or 6, I made the connection that business ownership could be my lane in life. It could be the
Mm,
thing that helps me make something of myself. And I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I kind of just wanted to prove that I could build a profitable business and an industry leading business in my little marketplace. And so I think I made the connection maybe junior year of college that this was what I was going to do. That I was going to just try to build the one of the biggest landscaping businesses in the Nashville, Tennessee area, one of the most profitable. I was going to do it debt free, and then I was going to sell it. And like I said, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder, and that's kind of what got me through the first several years of that business. And then as time went on, again, the road to growth, I evolved as a businessman, evolved as an entrepreneur, evolved as a founder, started to realize that the business wasn't all about, me and my personal goals. Now I had, 5, 10, 20, 30 employees. Now the business was about their livelihood, their prosperity, where they were trying to get to in life, and was able to kind of redefine why I was doing it. And I think if you're doing business correctly at any stage of the game, you should evolve into a whole new person every 2 or 3 years. And that's one of the cool things about it. It's one of things I've noticed over the last 20 years being in business. With my first business as a landscaping contractor, and now as the founder and CEO of this marketplace, I've noticed that about both journeys.
Do you think the younger you was a better employee or a better manager? Leader, I guess.
Well, nobody teaches us how to be a good leader.
Yeah.
Nobody teaches us how to be a good manager. And these are just kind of things that you have to learn on your own, or you don't,
Yeah.
and then you don't succeed. And so I did it. Did it wrong and poorly for many, many years until I started to develop and cultivate my own leadership style and my own management style, knowing the difference between management and leadership. Also, trying to suss those things out and understand, okay, right now I have my manager hat on, but right now I have my leadership hat on, and how are these things different? And I think it kind of hit me one day. I probably had 20 or 30 people, year 7 or 8, and I was driving to my office, and I had this knot in my stomach. I didn't want to go there. There was a lot of people working for the business that I just flat out didn't like. I didn't like a lot of our customers. It was a miserable place to work, and I was pissed off. And I almost was like, not feeling sorry for myself, but I was just mad at the situation. And then it hit me. It was like, you built this. Like, this is reflecting you. And so it was like it was like a learning moment. And so I think as a founder, as a leader, you get exactly the company culture you deserve. You get exactly the level of enthusiasm and enjoyment out of a business that you deserve, because you built it. It's a reflection of you and your enthusiasm and your energy. And it took me about 2 or 3 years to fix that, but that was a moment in which I learned, okay, this starts with me, and let's get it straightened out.
What's that? Okay, I know you have the mindset, you don't like what you've kind of built, and it starts with you. What's the next step for maybe people listening right now that they've had that drive to work and I know I have a problem here, but you can't blow everything up because that's probably going to be a pain to the bottom line and give more stress on your shoulders. Or, I mean, maybe for yourself, maybe that was something you did. I mean, what was that process like for you of changing, I guess, the culture, changing the way, I guess, you looked at the business?
It starts with the little things, and they start to add up, and you can't fix it with just one like move on the chessboard. And recently I've been kind of getting into Stoic philosophies and really focusing on things you can control and not worrying about things that you can't control. And one thing that's made sense to me studying Stoicism at a very basic level is almost like a professional athlete. You can't control how the referee calls it. You can't control if it rained that day. You can't control what the other team is doing. You can't control if your coach doesn't give you game. Like, all you can control is how you play, and that's it. And in the sense of like running that small landscaping company, which became a big one, and running my business now, all I can control is how I play. And so little things that I would do, rather than just walking in, with a pissed off attitude, I would walk in and like greet my secretary and say, how are you doing? Like, how was your weekend? And really care and give a crap. And maybe you might bring in sausage biscuits from Hardee's or out in your neck of the woods, Carl Jr. for everybody one day. Maybe you might bring donuts. Maybe you little things like that. And then those things start to add up and they start to compound. And then really figuring out, why is everybody showing up here every day, and why does anybody care, and what it is we're doing and why it matters, and really trying to beat that into the culture of the business, and really giving a crap about your people at like an authentic level, is how I solved it and how I turned it around, and how I was able to not do it wrong the second time when we built GreenPal. Now we have 47 people. And I was able to avoid a lot of those mistakes I made in the first business.
Now, talking about getting to GreenPal, I know you said junior in college, you started to think about the idea, I'm going to build this really big and then sell it. Did you have a timeline in place that you want to get it to in 5 years, 10 years before you actually sold it? Or what was that structure like? And when did you know it was actually possible to actually sell the company?
I always kind of dreamed about selling it, I guess you could say, but I wish I had worked like a real exit plan, like a real exit strategy, and I didn't. Had I done that, I would have been able to probably double my outcome. For me, it was more or less I had reached a point of not burnout in that business, but I had reached like a point of plateau where I personally was plateauing. And so, like I mentioned earlier, if you're doing business correctly, every 3 or 4 years, you should evolve in an unrecognizable person. You should not be able to recognize yourself from like 3 or 4 years prior, and that's because you're reading books on things that you need to learn. You're being humbled by the marketplace. You're developing your leadership style. You are learning new things. You're having to manage people that are smarter than you, and so that causes you to level up. So that's one of the fun things about starting a business and growing a business is that the personal development you get out of it. But I had reached a point where the business had kind of not plateaued. It was doing well, but my personal growth had plateaued, and I started to get uneasy about that. And it was just I just wasn't getting the enjoyment out of it that I once was. And so I set out. I thought, well, maybe I should try to sell this company. Nobody had ever sold a landscaping business in my market of that size ever before. So there wasn't like a large level of precedent for this sort of thing in my market. But I thought, well, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can get it done. And it was very much like a learning process for me. And luckily I worked with a good broker that kind of was my Sherpa through the whole process and helped me reverse engineer a lot of things into the business that weren't in the business and get the books all in order and get it to a point where it could be acquired. But from the moment I had the idea to sell the business to the moment that we got the business sold was a little over 2 years. And it was really probably the hardest 2 years of running that company, uh, other than maybe the very beginning, because the beginning's always the hardest. But it was really challenging. So if you're dreaming about selling a business, um, start now, because it should be about a 5-year process.
What were some of the things you had to implement to get it sold?
So one thing is a lot of people think about selling a business because they're they don't want to work so hard and they're burnt out and they feel beholden to it and they hate it and they want out from under it. And that's not a position in which to sell your business. You should love your business. It should be running so smoothly it can run without you. It should be devoid of like repetitive headaches, like because you have systems in place to solve those things, and because that's what it's going to be if you're ever going to get it sold. Um, Buyers don't buy a bunch of problems. They don't buy a bunch of headaches. They buy something that runs smooth, that runs predictably, and that can run without you, the founder. And so I didn't have that. And so I had to build in all of the block and tackling for that, all of the systems around operations and literally like everything, sales, HR, customer satisfaction, um, regulatory compliance, like all of these things that I was kind of just shooting from the hip on
Hmm.
had to be codified into repeatable frameworks and processes that I didn't have in place. And that's 99% of small businesses don't. And so if you're gonna sell a company, it's gotta run like a big company. And a good book about this is Built to Sell, is a really good book about that. And if you're thinking about selling your company one day, read that book and just do everything that book tells you to do, because that's what it's going to be like.
Now you sell the company, you get some money. Were you planning to retire at that point? Were you planning to build another company? I mean, what were your plans actually you were finished with selling your landscape company?
Yeah, I did think I was going to not necessarily like sit on a beach for the rest of my life, but I had anticipated just kind of taking it easy because running that business from the time I was 18 to 33 years old, I mean, I felt like I was 50 years old. Like it was really, really challenging at times. And I really just wanted to like hang it up. And I sold it and reinvested all of the money in like illiquid assets and really, really safe investments because I didn't want to ever have to pick up a weed eater ever again. And I hated the smell of fresh cut grass. It's like I never wanted to mow another yard ever again. And so I did that, and then I took like 6 months off, maybe a year off, and I got bored and went through a learning process and learned about myself that I was wired to want to be in the game. I was wired to want to be a part of a project that was growing and tackling challenges and solving problems and conquering new territory and I also wanted to do something different. I wanted to see if I could, create an innovation, create a breakthrough for a new product. I just felt like, you know, if somebody's going to do this, it might as well be me. And I had this idea that an app should exist for what I just spent the last 15 years of my life doing. And luckily, I didn't know how challenging it was going to be, or else I never would have done it. But after about 6 months off, I said, you know what, let's try to do this, and recruited two co-founders, and we went to work on building the first version and never looked back. Now, the first few years of building GreenPal were really, 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 really challenging. It was very much like pushing a rock up a mountain, but we just celebrated the small wins along the way, and those little numbers began to compound.
Now, talking about recruiting your co-founders, I mean, what was the requirements? What were you looking for in co-founders? I mean, I've had a lot of partnerships on this podcast, and some of them, I mean, I talked to them after the partnership were broken up. Other ones, it was smooth synergy for a multitude of years. So, what were you looking for in those partnerships?
Yeah, I was looking for one thing. I really was just looking for people who had a chip on their shoulder like I did, who wanted something more out of life and wanted to start a business because it could be the vehicle to take them where they wanted to go in life. And
Mm.
that's really all I was looking for. It's kind of like and that really kind of translates into our culture today. It's like the people we hire and the people we bring on the team, they weren't the star quarterbacks in high school. They weren't the popular kids in high school. They were maybe the nerdier types or maybe the less popular kids, and they didn't have that validation at a young age, and that manifested itself in some sort of weird literal like chip on your shoulder that makes you want to prove something and make something of yourself and create something out of nothing, and they had it then, and they will have it for the rest of their lives. So that's what I was looking for because that's how I am, and I found that with two other guys. Now, none of us knew how to code, none of us knew how to build software, none of us knew how to develop a marketplace, none of us knew how to do any of the 30 or 40 things you have to do to even have a prayer at playing this game. But I figured that we could just learn those things. We could just figure that out as we went. And that's how it that's how it actually happened. We just went to YouTube University. We read every blog post we could read. We talked to as many people as we could that were doing what we were trying to do, or in similar industries. Went to conferences. If we couldn't go to the conference, we would watch the conference on YouTube. And it took like 2 or 3 years, but we learned the basic 80-20 of software development, of product design, of the dynamics of building a marketplace, of growth and distribution and digital marketing, and all of these different things that you kind of have to be half-ass good at to get one of these going.
Now, as you're expanding, as you're growing, the employees you looked at and you looked to hire, Did you also want employees that had the chip on the shoulder, or what do you look for in a good employee?
That's exactly what we look for. And so as the founder, you know, one of the I guess things you have to shepherd is the culture. You know, as the founder, you are in control of a few really important things. Like you set the standard, you set the culture, you set the strategy. In many ways, you're a capital allocator, and so for me, you know, not screwing up the culture like I did in my first business was really one of my primary objectives. And so when we bring on a new person, we look for those qualities because that's what we're like, and that's what our first 5 hires were like. And we're looking for the people that aren't necessarily like arrogant and difficult to work with, but do have that chip on their shoulder, that do want to be a part of a team that's winning because they see that as their vehicle to get where they're trying to go in life. And that's what we're looking for. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be a good fit here because the rest of us are that way. And you know, different cultures, you know, are you know, it's not one culture is a way to win the game. I mean, I different types of cultures win, but that's certainly our culture, and it works for us.
What do you think in kind of building your brand has been kind of the biggest hurdle or hiccup you've had to go through and kind of getting to where you're at now?
It's like looking back at a decade of this business and 15 years in the other business it's really like a video game. You know, it's 10 levels of Super Mario Brothers, and every level there's a new final boss. And I think what holds up a lot of new founders is they're worried about Bowser when they're on level 1 or 2, and that can hang you up. So for me, it's like it always gets more challenging. There's always a new boss. It never gets easier. It always feels like day one, even though, you know, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions occurring on the platform every day. And, you know, we ended our first year with like, I don't know, 100 customers maybe, but now we have, you know, several 100,000. It's always a new set of challenges and a new set of problems. And so in the early days, it's, you know, nobody cares about your product. How do you get 20 people to care? And then how do you figure out how to solve their problems to continue to use it? And then as time scales on, your problems are less around getting 20 people. Now it's like, okay, now we have 100,000 people. And how do we look at the data and analyze the data and really understand the data that's occurring in the platform and at a level that can help us drive decision making, and it can help us almost like almost predict the future in a way. You know, startups and getting a company, you know, past its first million and 10 million in revenue are less like chess, and they're more like poker.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is you're not making these sure decisions that are linear. You're like making bets, and you're trying to make the best bet you can, and a lot of that comes from, you know, as you scale through the different levels of the game. It could come from gut in the early days and talking to 10 customers, whereas today, you know, we really try to get, you know, first off, get the instrumentation in place to understand what the data is saying, and then be able to analyze that data and then understand, okay, these are the bets we need to be making. And you know, I mentioned it before, but at the stage of the game I'm at now, it's like I don't write software anymore. I don't write blog posts anymore. I did that in the early days. Now I wear the hat of a capital allocator. We have a certain amount of money coming in, and how do I make the best decisions to put that money back to work and allocate that capital back to work? Do I hire another content creator, a new search engine optimization lead? Do I spend more money on Facebook ads? Do I hire a better product designer? You know, where do I make my bets? And that's the challenge of my role today. And then as we, you know, get to 100 million in revenue, I'm sure that we'll have a bigger set of challenges. And maybe I won't be the guy for that job, you know. But right now I'm having fun, and I'm going to keep doing it so long as I'm good at it and I'm having fun.
Well, if let's say we're talking in 5 years from now, where do you see the company going? Where do you see where are you going to be placing those bets in the next 5 years?
We need to be over 1 million users. We need to be over 100 million in revenue, and that is our 5-year goal as it stands right now. And GreenPal needs to be in the lexicon of the English language in the same way that Uber, Instacart, DoorDash, Airbnb, those are verbs in the English language, and so our brand needs to be alongside those brands in terms of familiarity and a household name. And we're nationwide in the United States now. We have liquidity in every city in the United States, and that's something that we've achieved only in the last year or two. And so now, as we have all of that foundation in place, now we can start to scale and really start to build that mind share, get our piece of that mind share, and just be the default way that you get this one chore done. You don't call the Chinese restaurant and order your General Tso chicken anymore. You just order it from DoorDash or Uber Eats. Um, that's kind of where we're at in the lawn care industry. People are still doing it the old way, and eventually they will just do it the easy way, and we want to be that easy way.
S- One of the words you just use, or the phrase I guess you use, we need to be. I mean, usually when I ask that question about where you're going to be in 5 years, people say, "Oh, I'll be there," or "We plan to be," or but using the word "need to be." I mean, do you when you make goals like that, are there things you tell yourself if I'm not there or we're not there, something happens, or what's the mindset behind? I guess need to be, and maybe it might have just been a subconscious thing.
No,
That's
it's
kind of
it's
curious about
it's
that.
it's it's very much. It's not like top of mind intentional, but it's part of my philosophy as a business, as a founder, and as an entrepreneur is that if you're not growing, you're dying, and if you're not taking ground, you're losing ground. And I think if you're not growing sales, if you're not growing user count, if you're not growing saturation, and like particularly for a marketplace like ours, that red hot density where somebody can just push a button and it is like magic, like somebody comes out and mows it in an hour. um and we need to be that good in every city in the United States, and if not, that's the mission, and that's the purpose. And so it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. That's why we're doing this. That's why we've been working our butts off for 10 years.
Thank you, Brian, for being here, and everyone listening. Go below to the show notes. You'll see GreenPal, easy to get to. I'm going to finish off with this last question, Brian. If you could talk to that junior in high school, that person that made the idea to go, okay, I'm going to switch my company, my landscaping business, from basically a company I work at to a company I'm going to build and then one day sell it. Is there any advice you'd give to that person?
Yeah, start reading. I didn't really pick up reading until my early 30s. I wish I had done that in my early 20s. I would have been able to uh, get that compound interest building earlier on what I was learning. And then the other thing is maybe even I would just beat into his head the value of compound interest. These little things that you do day in, day out, that add up and begin to snowball into big things. Um, a lot of people, and I myself have felt this way, where you're not seeing the progress, and you lose faith, and that mantra of all you can control is how you play, and then you get sidetracked by all of these things that are external and outside of your control, and then you don't play well.
Hmm.
And then when you stop playing well, you stop doing the little things, and then you stop getting the progress. So really trying to be into that young kid's head, the value of compound interest, and the little things eventually become the big things.
Appreciate it. Well, to finish it off, I know I said in the show notes your information is already there. I mean, is there a particular place, probably the best way, if they want to hear more about your journey, if you plan to put out books in the future, or is this just strictly on the website on GreenPal? Right.
Yeah. Anybody listening to this doesn't want to waste time cutting your own grass, just download GreenPal in the App Store or Play Store. Anybody wants to reach me, I spend most of my effort on Instagram, so you can just hit me up there, Bryan M Clayton. Just shoot me a DM there. I'll hit you back.
Appreciate it. Thank you again, Brian, for being here. Hopefully everyone listening got some great nuggets. I mean, Brian has his path, or has had his path since he was 15 in the landscaping business. Yet over time, he's, like he said, he grew, he expanded, he found out what's his niche, how he wants to focus, how he wants to grow. I mean, maybe you're doing something right now that you want to stay in that career, yet you want to kind of switch it a little bit. I mean, but be willing to be open, be willing to learn, be willing to grow and expand. Thanks, you guys, for listening. Please subscribe, please share, and go download GreenPal. Have a great one, guys.